I voted for Dig. Last time
I
we were
did
talking
too.
about it, I was like,
I did it.
That was hard to watch. I'm just sitting there like, I felt so dumb afterwards. I was like, I voted for these guys? Like, I just lost my life savings in that one. Like, damn.
Hello and welcome back to The Dive, driven by Kia, Season 8, Episode 27. This is my favorite episode already. I've decided, you know what? We had a good weekend of playoff games. Could have been a bit better, could have been a bit more competitive, but
It was some stomps.
this coming weekend will be much more competitive. I guarantee it. Team Liquid, they won coaching staff of the split. Congratulations to them. However, it's not surprising. I think we all said our votes, and I'm pretty sure, it's just the most obvious one. Looking at this year and the ascent of this team and how focused they've been able to remain after, so many international performances. We're always a little bit worried, are the teams going to get burnt out or anything like that? But, goes a long way with Team Liquid. They have a pretty deep coaching staff as well as having in-game leaders of Core, JJ, and Impact. So, honestly, I feel like that award is self-explanatory.
Yeah.
I was just going to say it can be hard to really know from the outside what the coaches are doing, right? Because, you could have a really good coach on a not-so-great team or vice versa. But I feel like Liquid's coaching staff is one where you can kind of point to things that stand out as, being clear benefits they're bringing to the team. I think just the fact that, players like Yon and APA have just been with Liquid and Spawn specifically, for 4 years. And they've kind of just built them up from the ground. And like you were saying,
they also birthed them, in the Team Liquid lab.
Created them from nothing.
The Petri dish
molded
babies.
them. Yeah, and so I think that's pretty impressive. I think that it's hard to look at that and not think that the coaching staff had anything to do with it. So, normally a hard award, but I think this one is pretty clear.
I'd also just say you can just look at Team Liquid's success and then kind of lack of success, compared to the two different eras. They were obviously still a good team, but after the Doublelift era where they won 4 in a row, 2018, 2019, they went on a really long dry patch of titles. And it's not like they weren't trying. They were importing everyone under the sun. They were buying every expensive player you could possibly buy. They were trying everything to try to win more titles, and they couldn't, right? It was a long time of not being able to win. And I know, talking to Spawn, I was talking to him because he's been a friend of mine for many, many years. He said, I didn't really do that much, just the players, blah, blah, blah. So, he just gives all the credit to the players. But it's pretty obvious, I think, to see, from even the outside, that things have changed. The way that they're actually even running their team has changed. The way that they have more priority on actually developing their own talent has changed. He showed that through his success, I think, in the NACL and with that team and building players up and working with them for a really, really long time. And obviously he brought that same idea and philosophy to the LCS team, and they won a title, and it's the first title they had won in 5 years, right? So I think, just the success speaks for itself. And even within this span of success, you can see how much these players are improving, so quickly. And I think obviously that's a lot of credit to the players and to how hard they're working and to, their own individual talent. But I do think coaching staff deserves some credit for that as well. So I do think it's pretty impressive how good they've gotten.
And the players themselves have stated pretty specifically to some things that Spawn does really well. And APA, namely, I think he was on Dom's talk show, was talking about how Spawn keeps them honest to the commitments that they have made and helps them as the players lay out basically their goals of the things they want to practice for that week and the improvements that, are their focus, and then holds them accountable to that. And so that type of focus and he also mentioned that he does not take any shit, and he is gets he's passionate, we'll say, in his keeping them to basically their own word that they set, and that's something that like you have these multiple driving forces where everyone's always talking about core JJ and impact and stuff, and how their love for the game and their intense practice, but then they also have kind of the driving like. Bus driver there at the end for Spawn, keeping them to the commitments that they've made, and then make sure that you don't like overlook things that you also learned in the past.
Totally.
It's funny because I originally want to jump in when you were talking about the double lift era, and I was like, it reminded me of Impact's interview where he was like laughing and joking a bit, but he was talking about actually I was also on that team for all 4 of those years, so. Personally, I like to refer to that as like Impact Era 1 for Team Liquid also, because it's
a good argument. Like, I don't know. It's hard to really dismiss that because he went on to EG and won afterwards. He's back on Liquid. They're winning. He wins a lot.
Impact is amazing, but to be fair to Double Lift, during that time, whatever team he joined was the team that was winning LCS. It felt like
it's so lucky for him.
I know.
What a good string of happenstance.
Elo heaven. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. So I mean, Impact obviously a big part of it, and I think it's like to your point. It's a combination of all these things working well together, right? It's dedicated players, it's talented players, it's a good coaching staff, it's all these things that are working together to make Team Liquid successful.
Yeah, I just think on the graphic for coaching staff of the split, they should also have like little picture of Core JJ and Impact in the corner,
like sitting on his shoulders.
Exactly, it's the two like in-game coaching staff members, and Spot is also really outspoken about Core JJ being the team captain as well. So that's always important.
I think that's so big for a team. Honestly, like that's always one of my biggest gripes because like. Some people call me like a coach hater or like uncoachable, whatever, because I've been outspoken when I've been on teams. I've worked with some good coaches, I've worked with some not as good coaches, and I really feel like in LCS it's different from traditional sports in the sense that like when you're in game, the coach can't do a single thing for the players, right? Like once you load onto the Rift, you could be in an hour-long game where the coach has absolutely like nothing they can do. So I feel like for teams, it works best if the captain is a player, right? Rather than what a lot of teams try to do where it's like, they try to mirror basketball or football or whatever, where the coach is kind of like the captain, the leader. But I feel like it just doesn't work in League because, you're not there in the game. Yeah. So I think the fact that they say Core runs it is really good for the team. Like having someone you can rally around. If there's, a hard call to make in the game, you just, you trust him, he makes the call, and you just all commit to it.
Yeah. And I mean, I do think that TL is just such a team of grinders, right? Like Spawn as well is one of those guys who's like, oh, I have to be there before any player arrives, and I have to be there after every player leaves. So it's like, I think it's easier to ask for your players to be grinding 24/7 if they see you doing the same thing. But we'll see if it does continue to pay off for TL. Obviously, we had our playoffs kickoff this last week. We had 100 Thieves play against Dignitas, and they got absolutely blasted. Dignitas did. 100 Thieves just slammed them.
For the people that are only listening with audio, Azael had one of the like deepest grimaces on his face as he said the words Dignitas there.
It was tough.
Dude, I voted for Dig. Last time we were
did
talking
too.
about it, I was like,
I did it.
They're gonna clutch up. These are some veterans. They're experienced. You list off their names. You got like Spica, Jensen, Sven, and they did not clutch up at all. They rolled over.
What is the opposite of clutch?
I don't know, dude. That was hard to watch. I'm just sitting there like, I felt so dumb afterwards. I was like, I voted for these guys. Like, I just lost my life savings in that one. Like, damn. I mean, they've got a lower bracket, Copium. Yeah, they could still bring it back, but
I think they're so cooked, man. It's the thing that makes it even more tough is just they looked so depressed on player cams from game one. Like nothing had happened yet, and it felt like they looked depressed. And I think it's a really, really tough. Like the whole dig season thing, I think people were loving that so much because it was all about the vibes, right? Like they're memeing and joking about, we losing the scrims, but who cares? You know, we're gonna bring it back. Above, I feel like that is dead and gone, at least from appearances. So
I think they're still losing scrims.
True. So it's tough, right? Like when you have a brutal series like that, it is embarrassing, especially for players who have won a bunch of titles and who have had these storied careers, right? Like it is really, really tough to have that kind of a performance. And I feel like for a lot of players, you got to be worrying about, okay, if this is this like how I go out? You know, like, are we going to get picked up again? We know that 2 teams are going to be exiting LCS. Is Dig going to be one of them? Even if they're not, will teams still want to pick you up if, like, you're this guy who's been around for a really long time and are coming off an awful end to your season? You kind of get that, like, stink on you of being on a really bad team, and people are going to associate you with it. It's hard to tell sometimes from the outside looking in, like, what is the cause of the problems? What is the issue? But everything kind of felt like it was going wrong. I know Licorice, a lot of people were ripping on Licorice and, saying he was really bad. But Jensen also getting solo killed by a Smolder at level 1 was just like, that was crazy.
Yeah, that was not good. I mean, yeah, I don't know. Because we were talking about the meta shift, it's like, this is going to be Dig's meta. Like, this is going to be way better for them. And it wasn't. I mean, they didn't.
I mean, he played 2 AD carries for.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the problem, right? Because we saw even in like the. Was it the NRG game or I don't know, maybe I was watching a different region. We've been watching a lot of League, but
there was a lot of mages in the fight.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to mention. It's like people are playing mages, right? It's like Orianna's open every single game. That's usually permanent against Jensen. Where is it? Instead, we're just getting like the Zeri level 1 feeding simulator. I mean, I don't know, like not even trying to hate on Jensen or anything, but like, why are they not just playing what they're best at? And I think part of it is, when I was doing the co-stream, I was talking with like Doublelift and Pobelter about it, and they were saying Spica's like really known for mage junglers, like Nidalee, Lilia, which he did play. And so that could be a reason why Jensen feels, more compelled to play ADs. But I don't know, man. I feel like if I was in their shoes, I would say, like, let's just play like Orianna and then combo it with, like, I think, yes, this AP jungle meta, but if Lilia and Brand are not open, I think you could still play something like Jarvan, Nocturne, just something that combos really well with Orianna. And yeah, it might not be like the absolute S tier.
But you're really good at it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a good combo and it's something you can play. And I think the fact that the other team probably hasn't played versus it a ton is usually something good. So I would just much rather see them do something like that than what we've been seeing.
I agree. I would rather see them do something different just because this was so horrendously bad. They did hit the emergency button in game 3 and they were like, put him on the Azir, quick. And Azir got some really good buffs for this patch with the armor, with the regeneration, and he was against an AD mid laner. But I feel like we're coping if we're like, oh man, if they just changed their picks, then everything would have been fine. It would not have been fine. Although I definitely agree with like it's like step 1, do something different than what we saw. I totally agree with that. But then even if they did fully change draft, I still, after watching that, I was like, I feel like they had zero chance. Like there were so many things, and it did start from level 1, but then you're also like, oh man, also their coordination in team fights. Oh, also their macro. Oh, also their laning. It's literally that meme where like, you're like, oh, they're a good team. They just have to work on, and you list every aspect of legends. Yeah. So you're just like, oh my God. That's why this is the part of today that I was dreading the most, because it was already like pretty depressing to cast that game and watch that game, and now we're like,
we're back,
and now you have to relive it. Your trauma of watching that series.
I feel so bad, because I really like all those players, and it was kind of heartbreaking.
I'm sure they felt worse.
A thousand times worse.
did.
I'm sure no matter how bad it felt watching that, it felt even worse.
No,
yeah.
1,000.
The people
It's
playing
Not
that.
even comparable. Like when it's your whole friggin' life and you're working towards that, like they want to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're super frustrated too because they're all players who have had success before, and I don't really know. It's really weird to watch them because I think a lot of people, including me, are expecting them to scale up, reach the peaks that they have been to before. And, we were talking early on the split on how, like, they were able to shrug off the losses and, like, the bad scrims and whatnot and have that mental resilience, which I still stand by. I think that is a really good trait, but something's just not working in the team. They're not really coming together. It seems like their bot lane has been one of the weaker points of this team for sure. And it's interesting because one of Double's points was Sven and Isles are both like huge solo queue grinders. They're both very high elo in solo queue. And he says they play well in solo queue, but then when they play together, they're just so bad. And so it could just be a complete case of anti-synergy where, this happens a lot in teams. And I've probably mentioned it before. One of my favorite exercises when my team's in a rut is just like, okay, let's just play a scrim where nobody talks, like no comms whatsoever. You could use pings, I guess, but like back when I was doing this, we didn't have all the fancy pings.
Back in my day.
We didn't have them pings.
We typed out "Dearest Carthus." These are.
Yes, exactly. But I mean, I think that can be good because sometimes you just get so in your head when you're in these situations where, you want to do right by the team. And sometimes, in the effort to get on the same page as the rest of your team, you're doing things that don't necessarily feel intuitive to you or even maybe correct in some cases. You're doing what you think the team wants you to be doing. And so it can look really unnatural. And then a lot of times it just ends up being terrible because it's, it wasn't a real play. And I think that's one of those cases where it's like, okay, you take away the comms, just have every player play and just do their own thing, like just solo queue it up. And, it's not like the perfect solution to everything, but sometimes it can highlight, what's going wrong. Because communication can be helpful, but it can also be really, really not helpful if it's bad. It can be super distracting and a whole bunch of stuff. So I don't know. It's hard from the outside to say what's going wrong with this team. Probably a lot. But
it's got to be a lot of different things. I mean, the players themselves were also, when I talked to people when this roster was made, they were excited because they were expecting success, right? Like they're like, everyone knows how to win. We're gonna they were expecting to be good quickly, I think too. And so it's definitely weird. I also feel like sometimes the way people are talking about these players and like, they haven't been good in years and years, and I'm like, this is kind of revisionist history because Jensen literally was on All-Pro last split. First of all, and people were talking about him as like actually carrying and owning for FlyQuest in playoffs up until the like Annie incident, right? In finals and stuff, he was getting some heat, but like he was amazing on Ari and whatnot throughout playoffs. That's literally last split. And then Licorice, he was out of it for a split, but then he was first team All-Pro the split before that. Sven, obviously, he's more removed from playing AD, so there's like maybe more of an argument there and stuff. And Spica, I guess it depends on when you think his last big successes were. There's maybe more of an argument there. But I just feel like the way people are talking is like, of course it wasn't going to work. These guys haven't been good for years. It's like, okay, like these guys were some of the best players within the last year, right? So I do think it's really surprising, not just that they lost, but the way in which they lost. Like they got their entire team combined for 15 kills in the series. Like it was crazy, right? Like Spica got 0 kills in the whole series. Jensen, one of the little like narrative things was he needed 8 kills in the whole series to pass Bjergsen for second most kills all time in the LCS, which is like, oh, that's kind of cool, right? He got 4 kills in the whole series, right? Like it's crazy. Like they just got absolutely blown out of the water. Nothing was working.
if he keeps that up for the next series, though, he'll be there.
He will, yeah.
Bjergsen stopped playing a while ago, and he still couldn't catch up to him. Oh, man, yeah. So from the other perspective, though, 100 Thieves' story is completely the opposite. It feels like it's all good vibes, all smiles, you know. They got the substitution of Tomo in, which we literally reference every time we talk about any aspect of this team, but they have a little bit of the honeymoon period. I personally was really happy that we actually got some good comms listen-ins during multiple of our series this weekend, actually. I thought the observers did a really good job grabbing some of those. But the one that I really liked from this series was the one where they were walking up towards the Baron, and they had a really sizable lead and a good setup, but everyone was hesitating on actually committing to the Baron, and Baron got down to like 2k health, but Tomo was like, just go. We are going to win this fight. Like, move forward. And he was like so calm and collected. And it like, this is the sub that just joined the team very recently, and it felt like his voice was the strong voice coming through that pushed them to, you know, go through with this. And then like they clean the team fight, they, you know, get it, and then they win the game pretty smoothly after that. But it was just cool to see like some evidence also of what the coaches as well as some of the players have said about Tomo, where he came onto the team, he already had like really good vibes because it felt like he was really driven. Oftentimes that happens, you know, when you get you know, removed from a team and have to go down to tier 2 and then fight your way back. Like, he was super hungry, also brought some really good comms to the team, and has really improved the bottom half of the map for the team, which are some things that 100 Thieves really desperately needed this season. And so it was really cool to see them kind of snowball and create this momentum and this hype that we had for this 100 Thieves team in spring, when Sniper's getting all these solo kills and, you know, Quid and River are just styling and really at their peaks. But then in summer, even Quid and River, who you know are good players, were not playing up to their own standards. And so it's really nice to see them playing well again, as well as the other parts moving around. And I just feel like it's like completely the other side of the story. It's almost like there was, you know, no energy can be created or destroyed, and so they had to take it from somewhere.
Perfectly balanced.
Exactly.
I saw energy get destroyed. I don't know why that's...
they had to take it from Dignitas, and so they just like took.
Yeah. They stole their vibes.
Yeah,
I mean, Quid had a really good series, which I think was cool to see because he's been pretty quiet throughout the entire split. The split after winning MVP, which, you know, yeah, there's meta changes, but it was also kind of weird. But you know, he had a really strong series. The stats obviously aren't everything, but he averaged across the entire series over 1100 DPM, which is like kind of nuts. You know, he was really a monster in a lot of team fights. It was cool seeing him back on Azir, and like the Azir Viego game was nice seeing River playing, you know, physical damage jungler and aggressive jungler like the Viego, was forcing skirmishes, was making things happen on that. So I think it was cool to see 100 Thieves playing really, really well. And, you know, maybe getting a little bit of their mojo back. I think it's also going to help to build some confidence for a series that's going to be incredibly hard, where they have to play TL. And the big question mark becomes, like, did 100 Thieves get better? Like, is 100 Thieves actually a threat, or was Dignitas just that bad, right? And that's the thing that becomes...
Both are true. The answer is yes.
So it's like,
I think Dig looked really...
That's what I think too.
Really not hot. I mean, both these series this weekend were really, really one-sided. I mean, it seemed like, you know, morale is just at an all-time low for these teams. And I think this is something that you see more in the upper bracket of a tournament than the lower bracket, because, you know, their back's not fully up against the wall yet, right? No, I'm dead serious. Where, like, you know, if you're really tilted, if you're just like, your morale is terrible, you're going into this series, you don't have that like primal hunger knowing, you know, okay, if we lose this, that's it, it's done. You're still thinking, you're like, okay, like, we can change stuff after this. If it doesn't work, like, whatever, we have another chance. So I think a lot of times you will kind of see people just roll over like this. But yeah, I don't know. It was rough. It was really rough. I didn't expect that at all, for sure.
No, I didn't. I mean, I do think 100 Thieves look better than they were playing, but it's such a tough task for them to go up against TL now, right? And it's just, that's what I'm kind of trying to think, is I'm like, does this actually change my prediction at all? Like, even like game score at all, right? Because coming into playoffs, before this series was played, I thought it was going to be a lot closer between Dig and 100 Thieves, but I thought regardless of who wins, TL is going to 3-0 them, right? Because it just felt like TL is on a very different level, from the regular season compared to both of these teams. So that's what I'm kind of trying to like wrap my head around now is, did 100 Thieves look enough better than the regular season to justify, changing a prediction at all against TL? Because that is the massive, kind of like hurdle that comes up next. Maybe 100 Thieves, would change it more for me if it's like, okay, 100 Thieves is maybe playing FlyQuest, who's looked shakier. 100 Thieves is playing another team who, isn't one of those top 3 teams. Then I do think they've raised in my estimation, but it's just TL is looking so tough.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing that I think 100 Thieves is going to have to deal with against TL is the lane swap thing, because TL has just shown that they're totally okay lane swapping against everybody because they're just going to execute better on it. And I know as a viewer and fan of the game, it's not what you like to see.
It's funny because Azael did a poll after the last dive episode that we did, since there was such a big discussion about lane swaps, and we're all in agreement that we don't really enjoy the viewer experience of it.
It's better to watch standard lanes than lane swaps generally.
More interesting for us.
Yeah, but I actually got a lot of like angry messages saying like, you're just assuming that, like, that's not true. Like, most of the audience actually likes lane swaps now. You're just making that up. So I was like, am I really that out of touch? Like, I don't think I am. So I like made a poll. And it was like, I think it was 80 or 81% said they prefer standard lanes over lane swaps.
Yeah.
Which I figured it would be 80 or 90%. And it was around there. I do think the hardcore audience, people who are super engaged, like people who would be more likely to post and talk about it on Reddit, are going to be, more disproportionately liking lane swaps, because it's more of like that deep strategic element, and maybe you can kind of like have more of an appreciation for that if you're a more hardcore fan. I can see that, but in general, I still think it is very true that the casual audience, like the average audience, most of them do not enjoy watching lane swaps, from everyone I've talked to and from the poll I did at least.
Yeah, I think from my experience, there are some people who enjoy it, but I think generally it's as a novelty kind of thing, with like the first time we saw it at MSI,
They're cool
when you're seeing a lot of different variations on how they're doing it. It's like, okay, are we going to defend? Are we going to, like go for this crazy invade? Are we going to see in like level 1 Vayne supports mid just ghosting at the other mid laner? Like, when there's some crazy stuff going on, it's kind of interesting in that novel sense. But once you start seeing it all the time and people start realizing everything that can happen, and then you get these like 10-minute no-kill games, like, that's just boring. I think everyone wants more action than that. So, anyway, going back to Liquid, even if it's boring, they're still good at it, and it's still something you need to deal with. And I think that it's just a really, really hard task to take a play. Like, put yourself in Sniper's shoes. He's a rookie top laner. He's good at solo queue. He's really good at laning. But you're going up against Impact, someone who won Worlds like before you were born, who's done lane swaps since they were first a thing. And so it's just such an experience difference there that I think they can maybe do it, but it's a tough task.
I definitely think that lane swaps are super high on the priority list for Team Liquid. Impact, not only has he played for a super long time and has experience, but the way that he just examines the game, he is so good at them, at getting the small advantages, getting the extra experience here, or getting the extra level there, or putting the extra pressure on mid lane when he has time, or helping jungle, or going in and getting the deep control ward that's going to set up the next play, and allowing Core JJ to get into his flank position or something. That Team Liquid, that is definitely one of their biggest weapons. And even when you talk to FlyQuest and Cloud9, the players say, yeah, we can definitely beat Team Liquid. But Team Liquid are the best. Like, they have the best macro. They have the best lane swaps. They all still hold true to that. And then they're like, when they try and say, oh, we're definitely close, like, we can actually beat them, they always say the downfall of Team Liquid is going to be their mechanics, and going to be some of these mistakes that, like, you see APA mess up a 1v1 or face check or something, at the wrong time. And those are the types of things that they cite as the weaknesses for this team. But they still all hold true of like, well, their macro is just insane. Like, I don't even know if we can catch them on that aspect, right?
Well, and I just think it's funny. It's so clear that they're the best team because every other team says they're the second best team, but no other team says they're the best team. You know what I mean? It's like when I interviewed Busio after their win, I was like, "Oh, how are you feeling about going up against Cloud9?" He's like, "Yeah, Cloud9 bot lane's not that good. Like, we're gonna take them down." And I was like, "Oh, so would you say you guys are the best bot lane in the league?" Like, well, maybe TL or And then you talk to Cloud9, and the Cloud9's like, "Yeah, like we're gonna take down FlyQuest, no problem." Blah blah blah. Like, so would you say you guys are the best team? Well, Team Liquid are pretty good. It's like everyone kind of just like realizes they have to just like cede that TL are the best right now. I also think, as much as everyone talks about the early game stuff and lane swaps for impact, and that is incredibly important in setting yourself up, as well as you possibly can. But I feel like that is the point that I hear everyone always mention is that it's like, oh, he like gets that little bit of experience. He does that little bit extra. But something that actually impresses me even more than that with impact is how he still knows his limits on the champions incredibly well from differing points of power. That's something that I think is actually so hard to play. And that's something that I see as an issue for top laners all around the world on top level teams, incredible top laners, because they have played 10,000, 20,000 games of top lane, and they've played them, with this, okay, at this point in the game, I'm this strong generally. It's like I see this window and I flash on that AD carry and I'm going to kill him, or I'm going to be able to do this, or I'm going to be able to do that. And then you put them in a lane swap game, and all of a sudden they're trying to go for those same plays that their instincts are telling you, oh, this is where you dive, or this is where you jump in, or that's where you engage. And they don't have the power to be able to actually pull that off. So people are going too far, or they're overcompensating, they're playing too defensively and not being able to capitalize on it. I feel like Impact rides that line better than almost anyone that I've seen, and that is something that I think is so hard. People talk a lot about like tanks and this and that, and like how it's not mechanics based. It's so knowledge based, and it's so much about having an understanding of like where is the line of how much can you really do, like when can you hard engage, when can you all in, when do you have the damage to do all these things. And being able to adjust that to these differing points of power that you have in a lane swap, to me, is like really, really impressive and makes him by far the best top laner in this meta right now. And then you have to deal with like Core, who everyone is talking about constantly being everywhere on the map in these lane swaps. But I will say, I want to give some credit to 100 Thieves and to how they were handling Dignitas, because I know you made this point last week, Meteos, and I thought it was a really good point, was that Dignitas should have the lane swap advantage over 100 Thieves, right? Is that these are all these players with all this experience, and these guys should be able to, pull off these similar things. Obviously, TL is a much better lane swap team, but still, it wasn't an issue at all for 100 Thieves. They were trying to match the swap, and they were really, clearly very prepared for it. And Golden Glue had talked about how that's something that they've really been focusing on, and he felt that they had gotten a lot better at lane swaps because he knows the teams are going to keep lane swapping against them. Like that is, the meta right now. So while I still do agree that TL are going to be heavily favored in lane swaps against them, that's true for like every team in the league, really. They're just the best at doing it. And I wanted to at least give 100 Thieves their flowers a little bit because that was something that we were expecting would be an issue against Dig, and it wasn't.
Yeah. And while I personally like watching the, like standard lanes and actual laning phases and junglers trying to work around the nuances of all the matchups and all those lane phases, there is a lot of detail in lane swaps where I really like the example that we pulled in the series, the NRG FlyQuest series, where NRG actually started out the first 5 minutes with a good lane swap. And they got a lead for Contracts Wukong in jungle camps, and they actually had an experienced lead on Dokla for the first 5 minutes. But then they completely mess up from the 5-minute mark to like the 12-minute mark, and FlyQuest balloons to like a 2,500 gold lead and a 2-level lead for Bwipo, and you're just like, wow, the game became unplayable very quickly for NRG, because if you mess up even a later stage step of swapping back on a different timer, on setting up for these objectives, it's like you cannot let up on your attention to detail with lane swaps either. Even though it's not as exciting to watch, when we have the mirror and I scroll from one side of the map where FlyQuest bottom lane plus Inspired are zoning Dokla all the way off the tower, off experience range of the minions, whereas zooming up to the other side of the map, then you have NRG's bottom lane just Whipple's at their face at the tower, soaking all this experience. He's not getting gold, but he's getting hugely ahead because they're not fully forcing him back and out of experience range. And you kind of like win the game that way. To me, like that's still a very powerful lever to be able to pull, and a good grasp of strategy to have, and understanding of League of Legends as a whole, but isn't as fun to watch for me. And so that's why I'm rooting for 100 Thieves in this matchup versus TL. I always love underdogs, but they really embrace the more exciting to me style.
But what if they lane swap? Are you no longer rooting for them?
Well, if they lane swap, it's gonna usually be them trying to match Team Liquid. They did do their own lane swap, of course, too. Like they know
Team Liquid are the spawn of the lane swap. So 100 Thieves are only matching the lane swap.
Well, they're just the best.
They're forced into it by the evil Team Liquid.
If you can't beat them, join them, Azael.
I really do feel like Liquid was kind of the ones who brought it back into flavor against their in their Cloud9 series, because we weren't seeing it for a while. I remember thinking, I was like, did they kill lane swaps? We're not seeing it.
I am happy that they did bring this back from MSI, though. TL, they constantly talk about how much they learned from their international performances. And let's get it straight, I'm grateful. And I'm happy that they did, because it makes me confident for Worlds, way more confident than I usually am. Because I'm like, okay, well, surely we're not going to get blasted and blindsided by Worlds metas and, changes like this. Or completely get gapped in macro game, right? Because they're
Team Liquid are a really good macro.
Surely we are not going to, get blasted, at least in the same way this year. And so I am very grateful that they have actually leveled up the entire LCS this way, and that all the teams are forced to think about this and play into this. So I don't blame Team Liquid, but maybe the design of the game or something that
I
don't blame Team Liquid. I just cheer for their opponents against them.
I just pray on their downfall
to take them out.
I mean, dude, that is like what is there's that game, a book called like Playing to Win, where a scrub is defined as someone who like self-imposes non-existent rules onto the game. Mm-hmm. And so it is truly the case of, don't hate the player, hate the game, right? It's you should never fault someone, especially in LCS. Like, you are paid.
They're pro players.
This game.
It's your whole job.
Yeah, your job is to win. It does not matter how cheesy, how skillless, how anything, other than the fact that you get to win. So, I mean, obviously, like, no credit taken from TL for the way that they play. If it's working, then it's working.
And I'm actually thankful that they did bring this back, and that they're forcing everyone to do this.
And they're looking so strong. Like, low-key, I'm really excited for them at Worlds. I mean, maybe things blow up. And
already assuming they're getting there.
I am assuming they're going to be one of our top 3 teams. Yes. And you will not hear me complaining if they lane swap and take down an LCK team or an LPL team or a GT.
Like, wow, this is so exciting!
Yeah, I will be popping off regardless.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I want to see our team succeed, and I do love, like you're saying, Kobe. I think your point is that they are pushing the rest of our teams to learn this skill that is going to be important for Worlds, right? And I fully agree with that it's like you need teams to be the driver, and whoever your best team in the league is often the team that sets the tone for practice, that sets the tone for the meta, that sets the tone for a lot of what your league is going to look like. And, Team Liquid, I think, is doing a great job doing that. They're the kind of pace setter right now, and everyone is trying to keep up. And that is, pushing our teams to get better at this skill that very likely is going to be a big test at Worlds.
Yeah, I very much credit TL with giving us this S tier that we talk about of top 3 teams, because I think that they have really improved Cloud9 and FlyQuest in giving Cloud9 and FlyQuest something to aspire to and something to chase. And that's why I love all the interviews that we're referencing with those FlyQuest and Cloud9 players, because you can see it. Like, they are like so hungry. They're like, yeah, Team Liquid are the best, but we can definitely beat them. They're not really that far the best, And then they're like, yeah, we're better than them with mechanics, and we're better than them with this, and we're better than them with that. So I just, iron sharpens iron, steel sharpens steel. Glad to see that we actually have that at the top of the LCS.
So before we move to the other side of the bracket and lower bracket and stuff, do any of you give 100 Thieves a game in this series?
I definitely do.
You give them
A game, sure.
I actually, maybe I'm too enthralled with the like vibes of the team. I always thought from last spring, like this team is just so fun to watch, and I really get caught up in the excitement of going for solo kills and the young players, and then like all the crazy champions that they play, the flexibility of Quid. Always been a big, River fan, and I love the re-entry of Tomo and his confidence and how it has completely changed the bottom lane and the way that this team actually can play the game. But I think there are very significant improvements to this team.
Yeah.
You were talking about, do you feel like those improvements that you've seen are enough
against TL?
Exactly, against TL, who are the most difficult of opponents. Personally, I definitely at least give them bump them up at least one game.
So you guys
I'm hoping
like 3-1?
I'm hoping for more than one. I am comfortable at putting my prediction at 3-1, though I am really hoping that it goes a full 5 and we really get to see them put some pressure onto Team Liquid.
Yeah, I think I'd give them a game. I would probably say 3-1 as well. I think 100 Thieves individually are really skilled. I think there is a world where they just, win some early fight or just have some lane go so much in their favor that they could just run away with the game. But I think actually beating Liquid 3 times is super hard. So
yeah,
I would be surprised, but I don't think it's impossible.
Yeah,
they just flip and they call a lane swap and they just get it. Sometimes you blind call lane swap.
I mean, I do think we might be getting a little carried away with the lane swap narrative.
I still think it's going to be 3-0, but
I don't want to get too carried away with the lane swap narrative though, because like while TL does do it a lot and they're good at it, I don't think it's like the only way they can play. And it's like
Certainly.
They're not one of these teams that's just like, oh yeah, we're just going to cheese everybody, because they are actually really good, just good at the game.
They're really good laners, and I think they're the best team fighting team in the league and the best macro team in the league.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that they're very good all around. So even if you can get standard lanes or whatnot against them, I think it's still like in a uphill battle.
I said this on the analyst desk, but I also, part of the reason I'm so excited is because I think that the meta only gets better from Team Liquid from here towards Worlds, as evidenced by this patch and the last few patches. I think the balance team is most likely to continue to balance the game more towards TL style that benefit from being on junglers that are facilitators and strong front lines like the Sejuani Maokai that they stuck to for so long. Guess what? Vi and Skarner are legitimately entering that pool as well.
I don't know about Skarner.
I know I've been pushing the Skarner really hard.
I've been playing him in solo queue. This champ sucks.
I've been pushing him really hard because
also got no games of him this week.
The Vi is proven though. Because to me, Vi has been pick ban in LPL. Along with like Misfortune and the Misfortune rail combos and stuff like that. But like Vi with the buffs, that's a proven card. So at least there are other facilitators too for and then there is also no way that they deviate from engaged supports this close to Worlds. I would be absolutely shocked if they completely, redid the support meta, barring super OP, Enchanter Senna. We'll get to that one later. Like that one is probably taken care of with a ban. But I think that the meta for TL for Core JJ and being frontline is stable and will remain stable heading forward. So I think the future looks good for TL.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's talk about FlyQuest NRG. Obviously, that series happened as well this weekend. Another pretty one-sided one. Definitely not nearly as one-sided as the other series, because NRG actually did win a game. Was pretty competitive in the final game until the wheels kind of fell off as well. So it was a closer series, but it did feel like Super Stomp game 1, then like a really like a kind of stompy game 2 win, then a stompy game 3 win. It was kind of like one of those series where it's like going further into the series, but each individual game feels pretty one-sided. Yeah,
I mean, to me, it definitely seemed like FlyQuest was just the better team, because even in game 2 where NRG won, they had that big lead early on, and it's still, I don't know, like it was hard for them to really convert the win. Like Whippo was legit the imposter this game. He was really cooking out there with the Volibear. He went like, what was he, like 0-5 or something? He just like picks up a Zeal and it's just like, oh boy, it's gonna be one of those games.
Yeah,
So,
at first you see him go Iceborne and you're like, okay, he realized, he got killed a couple times. He's just going to go full tank, right? And then you're like, wait a second.
I mean, it's tough. On one hand, it's like, you could go full tank, and that's probably better. I don't know, maybe like transition to utility tank, Knight's Vow, Locket type stuff.
I think at that point, yeah, because NRG were clearly focusing him, right? They like multiple games in the series, like they just kept going for kills on him.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think even with that, it still felt like it wasn't the cleanest game from NRG. FlyQuest kept finding opportunities in the game. Like they were getting some good picks. They were kind of fighting back.
Yeah.
Versus when it was the flip side, when FlyQuest had a lead, NRG was just completely rolling over. And we see that all the time when it's a stronger team versus a weaker team. This is kind of how the games go because, in a best of series, sometimes, the draft might not work out for the stronger team. Sometimes the early game might not work out, but there's still so many opportunities throughout the game where you have to continually make the right decisions. And, FlyQuest was for sure way stronger.
I feel like Bwipo has just been kind of struggling this split a bit. Like he does have some really good games. I think he's really good when he's playing from a lead, but it just is really feeling like he does not know how to gracefully lose lane, and he just like plays so aggressively and with so much confidence, even when he maybe shouldn't. And I feel like that's kind of bit them a number of times. And you talked about this before, and you were talking about it on the lounge as well, where it was like against the C9 series and stuff, where he was forcing this play that pulls Inspired, off of red buffs and off of this big jungle advantage and gets, kind of loses them the game in that situation, even when he was playing a tank. And I felt kind of similar about the Volibear game. The Darius one kind of worked out for him, I guess, but it felt like more because of NRG dropping the ball than because of him having any great success. And when I think about FlyQuest going forward, like they really are showing a lot more holes than C9 or TL, right? They had more than double the actual amount of game losses than either of those teams. TL was 12-3, C9 was 11-3, and FlyQuest was like 11-7, right? They had way more individual game losses, and it does feel like as a result they're much more vulnerable to some of these lower teams. That if they have a really good series, like FlyQuest is going to make some mistakes that you're going to be able to capitalize on. You're going to be able to maybe find some windows into a series. And I think NRG was able to do that, to be able to get that second game win. And the final game, did obviously end up going FlyQuest's way, but it did, at least in my recollection, was like a fairly competitive game for a while. Even though NRG, was not having a good series and Palafox was definitely not having a good series. I think it's kind of sad to see, NRG likewise with Dig, like, though again, I don't think this is anywhere near as one-sided or as kind of like, doom and gloom, at least for me, as the Dig series was. But it is sad to see some of these players that we know can play at a really, really high level, like have a really rough series and be making mistakes where you want to see them playing at that top level. Like I interviewed Thinkard and Nuke Duck before, and he was saying, he was kind of talking about like, oh, we're in playoffs, like, whether you're 6th seed, 3rd seed, doesn't matter. You just have to perform on the day. You just have to bring it back. And, they had their miracle run in summer and developed worlds. And you're like, okay, well, maybe they can cook something up. Maybe they can kind of have that NRG magic because we saw them do it last year. I feel like people were kind of feeling similarly about NRG and Dig. And it just didn't feel like they could kind of recapture that for either team.
Yeah, I don't know what's been going on with NRG this whole year. It just feels like they did make the swap from Ignar to Huhi, but I don't know. Like, that doesn't seem like that is the thing that's, holding them back. It just feels like the entire team as a whole is just not what they were. Yeah, I don't know what happened. Like, I think it'd be interesting to, like, listen in on their team comms or, like, watch their scrims or something, maybe get a better idea. But from the outside, I don't know, man. It's just, like, they're just making tons of mistakes. It feels like, I don't know, maybe they're not practicing as much as they used to. Maybe they're just totally on different pages on how they play. But I don't know. They just don't look that good.
Some of the peaks that I remember from this team were Yeah, of course, we've got the highlight reels where, Contracts has successful gank after successful gank, and those are the games that they're able to snowball. But there were also so many games when NRG, even when they were at their peak, they would lose early, and it would be later when the map is open
Backdoors and
that
stuff.
they would do, backdoors. They would be teleporting in when they're like 5,000 gold behind to be able to, sneak an extra couple towers, or, go for a base race, or, like give up Baron to rush for something else. And then they would also make a lot of these really big game changing picks later on when they would be like, all right, the optimal play for our opponents is to, just go for the reset and then come out slowly to this objective. And so they're like, all right, we're just going to drop 2 waves. We don't care. We're going to drop our wave top and our wave mid, and we're going to go meet them here before they get in place. And then they would like surprise the first person that gets there. And, they killed the AD carry, and then they snowball and they're able to win a game from behind. Or they're doing something where they're like Dokla and Palafox are on like Akali and Yone, and it's late into the game. They're trying to split push, and then Contracts is able to pressure a side lane really well. They would do like hover plays. They would do like teleport support plays, and it was those types of like exciting moments and like trap plays that got them a lot of fans. That plus winning, versus a lot of the top teams is what you remember from the peaks of this team. And it feels like that type of thing isn't there as much. It's for sure part of the team fault and the players' fault, but also does it feel like the meta now is less volatile like that? There's less of a likelihood that the games get to that state, or is it purely because of the teams that have been playing? I'm trying to think through it just kind of objectively, because we now have more like double AD carries and more. It feels a little bit more methodical now.
But I feel like Palafox was always such a rock for them, even when they had
the individual play.
Even when they had volatility and like they'd have these ups and downs, Palafox was such a stalwart presence for them. I felt like where he was always consistent, and he was always going to be that guy who would be a big team fight threat, who would be a strong laner, who would have that ability to make you think that they could always be back in the game. And I feel like he's lost that a bit, and he's making a lot more individual mistakes. He's not performing as well individually. But the biggest thing that stands out to me, and this is what I did that little Telstra thing on when we talked about them this weekend, is when I was thinking of NRG before, it always felt like, and CLG prior to that, it's like they're greater than the sum of their parts, right? Because they're always working towards the same thing. They always felt like
follow the call
on these plays, exactly. Like you talk about, the backdoor or the big trade or the we're overloading one side of the map, or we're going to do something, crazy, whatever. They're all doing the same thing. They're all going for it. So whether it failed or not, it always felt like 5 players executing on the same vision. They have completely lost that in this split. And that is the biggest thing that stands out more than anything else, where it's just like, they clearly are, not agreeing on how to play the game, not seeing the game the same way. In each individual game, it always feels like there's someone basing while someone else is engaging, and they're choosing different targets. They're not coordinated, and that I think is just so detrimental to their success when, they were this team that was able to pull off these crazy plays. It's like you pull off these crazy plays, these surprising plays, by being all fully committed to it and being able to kind of have that element of surprise and that like quick execution on it. And that, I think, more than anything is what feels like it's really, really missing from them this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think you put it well. I don't really know what's going on there. I think Palafox's performance is probably the biggest individual one that seems to have taken a huge hit, because like you said, he was, in my mind, such a pivotal part of their success last year, because even comparing him to APA even 1 year ago is so night and day, because in playoffs and at Worlds, like we saw, like you don't see stomps like that ever really. The way, I think it was like Palafox's Syndra versus APA's Ori, or maybe it was the other way around, one of those matchups, but like, yeah, APA was just feeding his brains out. Like it was actually a reportable performance. And there was all stuff about like, Palafox is just like his father and whatnot.
It was both sides of every matchup.
Yeah. I mean, Palafox was him last year 100%. And he's not at all now. Like he has just been having like some of his worst games ever. And I think he knows it too. I don't think it's like a secret. He's slumping a bit. So Yeah, I don't know. I think NRG might not have the miracle run that they did last year.
I will say it might not be a miracle, but I still predict them over Dig.
But
Really? Dude, that's actually a hard prediction.
really,
You think so?
I think Energy's gonna clobber them.
Dude, they both looked so weak, though, is the thing.
I feel like Dig looks completely dead in the water, though. It's like Dig got 4 towers in the entire series.
They got cheesed. No, I don't know.
Dig had like literally nothing going for them at any point of any game.
Yes.
And they were playing against an expected weaker team.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it happening. I mean, I thought I had hope.
I can see it.
I didn't
last week,
expect
too.
Thieves to be weaker.
I don't know, though.
You didn't expect 100 Thieves to be weaker than FlyQuest?
Oh, I thought you were talking about then.
No, I'm
Dig.
talking about strength of
Then
opponent.
Dig. Yes, then,
right?
then FlyQuest. Yeah.
Dig looked way like completely dead in the water against
Yeah,
the like 4th or 5th seed or whatever they are. Versus Energy at least was doing stuff against the 3rd seed, who's supposed to be one of the big 3.
And they won a game.
They won a game and they were taking towers and getting kills. Like they were doing things.
Yeah, that's true. I think that I don't know.
Like the last game
I did
only
have
a
faith.
5K gold lead. The last game was like close in gold.
Yeah,
really.
it was. I believed in Dig and they let me down. But will they do it again? I don't know. It's tough, dude, because both teams kind of got stomped, I would say. Like, yes, NRG did win a game. Yes, they were kind of ahead in game 4. But just their overall play, I don't think it was that good.
It wasn't good. But
Overall,
was it 4 towers in a series bad?
Well, I think Dig
4 towers in a series is crazy.
I mean, yeah, it's bad. They got owned. I think that with a different draft approach, I think Dig could look better. I think that they really didn't play to their strengths as a team. And I don't know, dude. I think if I was Dig, I'm just putting, put bot lane on utility duty, give them like Ashe Nautilus every single game, something like that. Just play through mid jungle. Put Jensen on a mage, Spica on something, I don't care, whatever. And I think they could look decent. I don't know. But that's not what they did.
Before we get too much into the basement brawl, we should probably talk about FlyQuest more too, because FlyQuest, I started on a little bit of a negative with Bippo, but the rest of the team I thought was actually playing really, really well. And Masu and Busio were super good this series too. After I know like some people were being more critical of Busio in the last couple weeks of the regular season, but like I thought he had some really good games. His Bard game was really, really good. That like Ashe Bard game where they were just walking around the map and like every Ashe arrow was a kill, every Bard.
Dude,
was
Masu was actually, I don't know, did he have Vanguard installed on the computer? I think that needs to be double checked because he was hitting the nastiest arrows on repeat.
Yeah.
Even there was the one like he shot it almost like from mid to top and hit it off a Bard ult.
Yeah, timed it perfectly.
Yeah, like that is not easy to do that precisely. And so I think Masu has just been having such a great split. He has been playing so well. Like we were talking about him for Rookie of the Split, and I think Rookie aside, he's just actually dominating. He's been doing so well on so many different picks. He has a really aggressive play style, and the way he thinks and talks about the game too, I think is super cool because I remember his interview where he's talking about his Kalista and he was saying like, yeah, I'm going to pick it to have like a lot of pressure early game, whether that means snowballing my lane and stomping it or pulling people to my lane and then soaking the pressure. Like that kind of mindset of just like, I'm going to pressure the enemy team. Like that's my goal. I'm going to be a threat. They're going to have to deal with me. Is so good for a team. So I think Masu is absolutely a standout player in this team. And honestly, I think he's a big reason for their success recently.
Yeah, to me, FlyQuest, their carries have just been exceptional. Him and Quad and Inspired in a lot of the games, like I feel like they've been really good. It's just some of the weird choices and errors that usually come from their setup or their front line or individual when Whipple is a lot of times when Whipple has a lead actually is sometimes when he does these over forcing things. I don't know if it's a situation where he feels extra pressure to carry or create something, but in some of the situations it's like it feels like you don't have to do something there, and then he does a little bit extra, but
that's kind of his bag, though.
Yeah, it does, and it also doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's Whippo for you. Like he's not going to do the normal play. He's going to do his own thing, and I think it's fun to watch. You know, love him or hate him, I think Whippo is like it's so great to have him in the league because through his play style and just personality, he's fun to watch.
He's a content machine.
Yeah, it's awesome, and you know he's pulling out stuff like the ghost Darius. He's hitting you with a little bit of that solo queue special. And yeah, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you get the Volibear, but a lot of times it does. And I don't know. I think top lane's in a weird spot right now. I feel for top laners across the world, especially in competitive, just because of we keep going back to lane swaps. But yeah, nobody deserves that. But I don't know. I think he's still pretty good overall. And sometimes, yeah, he'll have mistakes forcing stuff, but other times, like he'll just end up creating so much pressure from the play itself that it's really good for the team.
And it's weird to me too, because then it always makes me rate FlyQuest higher than their actual standings or the kind of like normal view of them, because I think, oh, that blunder that they made was like pretty big and easy to fix and egregious. Right. And so that'll be something that they won't do the next time. But it keeps coming up like in different ways. It seems like in the games that they do lose, I always end up feeling like, wow, that, they at this point, there was always some point in the game I can point to where I think
always an overforce though.
I mean, yeah, I'd have to go back and check all of them, but a lot of them, like you were saying, there were some instances where about not being able to lose gracefully.
Yeah.
Like the Volibear example is a bit different than the Nautilus example. The Nautilus one that I was referencing, he was 3 plates up on the Nautilus, and like the Nautilus top was actually working, but then we meme on it because big blunder, throw the whole game for you plus your jungler type of thing. And so yeah, there's not a one size fits all, I guess, easy band-aid, and It's very interesting because I just listened this morning to the pros episode, even though we're recording this episode of The Dive the Monday right after the games, which is very quick. But listening to the pros that was recorded last night on Sunday right after the series, they had Inspired and Busio on. And they were so confident going into their rematch versus Cloud9. Inspired was saying he was actually more confident after losing to Cloud9 now for their rematch, because of kind of similar things. Where
I'm not surprised Inspired. I mean, that's good though. You want to be confident. You don't want to like have your tail between your legs, be like, oh no, like they're gonna beat me again. Like, no, I'm.
And it's kind of because he was like, oh yeah, the blunders that we made are like those are so obvious and like easily fixable, and some of the things, and they were in those games in positions to win, and one of the things that both of them actually referenced was how different JoJo played on stage, and how in scrims he's like super crazy. He's gonna 1v2 flip, and he's always playing super aggressively because he doesn't have that fear. But they didn't put that pressure, that Cloud9 early game pressure on them in the series, and so I think that is one of the reasons why they actually felt more confident now, because they're like, well. Like we had some good positions in the early games in these games, and then it was reasons that we should be able to fix because we caused some of the issues that caused them to lose. But I thought that was pretty interesting, and I feel like since everyone's agreed Team Liquid's more out of reach, and everyone's like, fine, they're the king, we have to bow to the king or whatever. But it leads to this other like sibling rivalry of FlyQuest Cloud9, where they're both like, yeah, but we're the second best, and we could definitely beat them even if they just 2-0'd us.
Yeah, I mean, I think FlyQuest could definitely beat Cloud9. That wouldn't surprise me. But at the same time, I think you can't just like wipe away and be like, yeah, like those mistakes are easy to fix, because like that's why they dropped way more games than those other teams at the top, is because they consistently make those mistakes. They consistently have these things where they throw a game, or they go over aggressive, or they do something silly, or Busio had some off games or whatever, right? Like they're just not as consistent as Cloud9 and NTL, and that's kind of why they ended up with a lot more losses. So I do think that is scary when you're in a best of 5, because especially when it's between two teams that I think are relatively close. Like I do think they are of a similar skill level to Cloud9 to TL, that they could beat a series against them. When I talk to TL and when I've talked to Cloud9, people tell me that it's like, yeah, it's kind of an any given day thing in scrims. Like we could absolutely pound FlyQuest, but then they could blast us the next time, and like they're a good team. But in a best of 5, in a close series, when you have more of these like oopsie games where it's like, like we were winning, but we threw that one, and like, oh, we were winning, but we like did this silly thing. Those can be the difference in a best of 5, right? And they often are the difference in a best of 5. It's like it goes back and forth, but you had that one game where you were in a winning position, you should have won, but you lost. Now all of a sudden they take the series, right? And I think that's my concern for FlyQuest, is that they have not shown me the same level of consistency that Cloud9 and TL does, and that's why I start to favor Cloud9 in this series. And I feel like Bwipo, it's almost as though when he talked about being in this situation in spring, there was a pros episode where he was kind of talking about how like, oh, with like Masu and we have this rookie bot lane and we so on and so forth, it's like you kind of know maybe that you have to like do that extra, like do that little bit extra to like get the game across the finish line, or you have to be the guy who can kind of like make that difference to be able to make your team win. And I feel like maybe he's still in that mindset, but I don't think he has to be anymore, because like Masu's playing really damn well and Quad's playing really damn well. Like you can sometimes just get in the backpack and be like, my bot lane's doing great, my mid lane's doing great. Like all I need to do is just like exist and not be the reason we lose the game if the game is going wrong. And they can win that way. And so it's going to be really interesting, but like Thanatos is a really strong laner. So, I don't think that's going to be easy for Bwipo. And Cloud9 is, traditionally our best early game team. Like they do put a lot of pressure on, so they can sometimes force those mistakes. I think bot lane could be an absolute bloodbath. I think both these bot lanes like are willing to play aggressive, to really play really scrappy. So I think the team that stays kind of even keel and stays, really calm throughout the series is probably going to be the team that actually wins in what should be a close, really, really exciting series.
Yeah, I feel like FlyQuest are more likely to lane swap, similar to like TLR versus 100 Thieves. Feels like Sniper and Thanatos are the two top laners in the league that are way better at laning phase one-on-one and way better mechanics, and everyone sees both of them as way weaker at the lane swaps and responding to them. So it does seem like in our series we have an easy to point to team in both of the series that you would say, well, they're going to be the ones more likely to force those and try to make the early game more about how you swap than how you lane.
Yeah, I think that is a good example of, Sniper and Thanatos are players that are really good at laning and then also a lot better at playing from ahead than behind. Because, playing from behind it's a hard skill to learn 100%. I think I would give that series to C9. Like, obviously, I'm kind of biased because I like C9, but I think just watching them, they just seem to have like less cracks, I guess, than FlyQuest. Because, like you were saying, FlyQuest does, sometimes just randomly like full send it and in their own game, and even in their last matchup when we saw, like FlyQuest was way ahead game 2, and then they just got outplayed in team fight super hard, where it kind of felt like everything was lined up for them to win, right? Like they had Cloud9 was like caught in the line brush on top side of mid. FlyQuest had every angle, and they just misplayed the fight. Like they got super outplayed in a team fight while being up in gold, while having a positional advantage. And so that kind of thing is like, I don't know, that's not really something you can teach. That's just kind of like your like talent as players to be able to pull something like that off. So I think overall C9 is probably a stronger team, so I'll give it to them.
Yeah, I mean, this one's going to be super exciting for sure. And to your point that you were making earlier about Masu and Quad being so reliable that sometimes it's like, yo, everyone just take a deep breath and like calm down. It was also very evident that at least Inspired and Busio, who are on pros, were 100% on that train, because Raz asked them specifically about Quad and talked about how Quad has been doing so well. And both Inspired and Busio were so complimentary. They were like, yeah, he is insane. We know how good he is. And Inspired was like, yeah, he is the best mid laner in the league if we can set him up with good conditions. His only kind of thing that he would take away from Quad was that his communication isn't there yet. And even though his English is actually quite good, he is not selfish enough, doesn't ask for enough. And so Inspired was like, yeah, I still like, I try and play around him, and I need to, get better at setting him up with good conditions. They want him to like ask for more. Busio was like, yeah, it's fine. I just play around him anyway. I just go mid anyway and try and set him up well. But maybe it is a thing of within team communication for all members, because I think they're on the same page of like, wow, yeah, like our carries are playing really well. So maybe it is just a matter of some exercises specifically aimed at communication. I kind of liked Meteos' example earlier, where it's like you play some games by taking it all away, and then you like introduce it in some ways. Yeah, if there's some other, rather than just playing through scrims and looking at strategy, maybe like if they do something to hyper focus on comms or being on the same page, because that also helps with team fights. If sometimes like you don't have time to say, let's do this in this team fight, especially if you're flanking from 3 angles. Like you need to have similar instincts of how to play it out sometimes. So that's kind of like how you want to build up your communication, where you want to have good similar instincts of how to play them first. And then like the necessity for some exact comms aren't there all the time.
Yeah, and it is a really interesting issue to have in a team like that, where, you want somebody to be more selfish, because usually in a team game you think, how can I make my teammates' lives easier? You're too polite as a carry can be a problem, it can be a hard thing to teach. It's like, hey, dude, like have a bigger ego, like be more selfish. Especially if you put yourself in Quad's shoes. He's, English isn't his native language. He's the new guy in the team of, an already established, successful team. And I would assume Inspired's their team leader from, he's like a very assertive dude. So coming in and just, demanding him to play around you is probably not going to be the most comfortable thing. And so it's definitely something that's going to take some practice, take some reps to sort of just build up the trust, build up the communication with how you want to play. But I think they're doing really well already with that. And so the fact that they recognize it, I imagine Inspired's going to, if he recognizes something he needs to do, he can help out a lot in that regard, because, it is a lot easier in a team when, if you're the guy who needs the resources, if everyone on your team is just offering them to you and you don't have to feel like you have to like demand them, I think it can kind of feel like a better environment, because, it's like
you're working towards
it's more positive. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think this is going to be such an exciting series. I mean, this is by far the one that I'm most excited for this weekend, is the C9 FlyQuest series. And I think just in general throughout playoffs, like these teams are going to meet probably a bunch of times. And I'm hoping that each one is going to be incredibly, incredibly exciting. There's a high chance that we're going to have rematches between the teams as well. So, you could see that evolution of the matchups, series over series, which is going to be really, really high. I'm on the C9 train right now too. I definitely do favor them. Wouldn't be shocked if FlyQuest won, but I do just think that Cloud9 just seems that little bit more consistent. And I do think that kind of X factor that you're talking about, in a team fight, like Blabber definitely has that X factor. JoJo has that X factor. I think Berserker does as well, as guys who can just like take over a game and kind of do that. FlyQuest has their guys too, but I definitely am more on the
What's your game score prediction?
I think, well, maybe it's just hopeful. I want to say 3-2 Cloud9. I really do think we could get a really close series between these teams. But my feeling is that FlyQuest is going to kind of drop the ball in one, and that'll be the difference.
Game score, I think I'll go with 3-2 as well. Initially, I was going to say 3-1, and I kind of feel like 3-1 is like the safe bet for games, because
it's the most common result.
Yeah, and it's also, you're only ever going to be one game off, right? Like it's either a 3-2 or a 3-0, or you got it. I'll say 3-2. I think they're a pretty good match. I think it'll go the distance.
Yeah. Even though I really liked listening to, and I liked the reasoning and like the funny statement of, I feel more confident in our rematch versus Cloud9 after being 2-0'd and losing to them. I think that's funny. I'm glad that they're more confident, but I think Cloud9 are going to win.
But you are not more confident.
It did make me more confident that they're going to beat C9. So I'm actually exactly the same as both of you. I'm on the 3-2 train because I do think, like, you can see the ways where FlyQuest could win those games versus Cloud9.
Yep.
I was like, they for sure should have won the lane swap one after the really good opening, and then it was like just a very big blunder. So I'm also very excited for that one. I hope that it does go to the full 5 games, and I'm glad that we do have the opportunity for these rematches.
We're going to take a quick break, but we will be right back, and we'll be talking about some All-Pro.
Hello?
Bro, what are you parking?
Seriously? What is that?
Remote smart parking assist. You could have parked anywhere.
They could have parked there. They could have parked there. They could have parked there.
Welcome back to The Dive, driven by Kia, and we are going to be talking All-Pro. We got the spoilers. We got the early deets because All-Pro results haven't come out, but because the episode is going to come out after All-Pro has come out, they gave us the spoilers. So we got the inside scoop right now.
And let me tell you, they're shocking.
Yeah. So if you're listening to this in the future and you want to time travel back to the past, you could look on our laptops and find out who's in All-Pro a couple days early.
Yep. And you are going to be shocked that it is filled with Team Liquid, Cloud9, and FlyQuest members.
I want to see if is there anything that wasn't what I voted.
I mean, this is a mix-up of those 3 teams.
Literally,
everybody is from those 3 teams.
The only thing that's out of order from what I voted, there's literally one thing, and I have Masu second above Berserker, but I'm not surprised that he got the 3rd team. So we can just go through top to bottom. So first team All-Pro is Impact, Blabber, APA, Yon, and Core JJ. Second team is Thanatos, Inspired, Jojo, Berserker, and Vulcan. And then the third team will be Bwipo, Umti, Quad, Masu, and Busio.
So it's basically just junglers shuffled around, and then the rest of the entire teams. It's Liquid with Blabber, Cloud9 with Inspired, and FlyQuest with Umpty, which is really interesting.
I had mine a bit more shuffled around, not just the jungler shuffled, but it is very interesting that it's literally just Blabber promoted to TL.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean it makes sense. This first All-Pro team, I think this is what I had. Like all of TL's playing really well, but I still have to give Blabber a lot of credit, and I think Umpty's probably not going to feel too great about this, and it's kind of a job hazard as a jungler who plays the way he does. When you're on Sejuani Maokai duty, you're just not going to look that good, and I think he's probably okay with that.
Jungle.
Exactly, and I have to imagine that it's not going to bother him because I've been in a similar situation myself, and it's like, the guys playing Nidalee and Kindred and Graves and whatever, Lilia nowadays, they're always going to look better because they get more farm, they're higher level, more items, more kills, whatever. But, all that matters is winning. So, if I was him, I would just say, okay, like, you keep your first team All-Pro, I'll just keep getting my championships.
You did say on a pros that he thought he was the best jungler in the league, so like maybe it would hurt a little bit. It just depends on the person.
I mean, I feel like you can say that it's not going to hurt, but it is going to, be in the back of your mind, especially because if you know about Umpty's history and him constantly, you actually should, because his interview after they won was so heartfelt, and he was talking about, finally being the champion, how much Umpty has gone through and been on bottom teams for so long that it really did mean a tremendous amount to win the LCS and be the champion. And he had tears in his eyes saying, I'm the best. So I think that it actually, to your point, Meteos, like, will maybe not upset him, but it will be, maybe it'll fuel him more and be like, man, People are never giving me enough credit. And he has worked really hard for it. But the reason is, like, you are clearly a role player here for TL to play this facilitator, setup for the rest of the team. Whereas when people look at Blabber, and even I believe Spawn on Travis Gafford's tier list thing that they did, when they were ranking Blabber, were mentioning how Blabber's mechanics are so good that he is one of the few junglers where it doesn't even have to do with jungling, but when you get later into the game and when Blabber is fed, he can outplay your carries, and he will out-carry your carry because he has really, really good mechanics, in addition to being a very smart jungler. So I think that is one of the ways that people rank these junglers, and they see, similar things with Inspired, also very smart about the game, also very good mechanics. And so I wouldn't really fault Umpty for the way that they have kind of put Umpty on this team. But like you're saying, that is going to influence votes. And I do think the mechanics, as well as the way they play the game for the other junglers, is a pretty big influence on that part. I'm also saying this. Remember, Umpty got a pentakill on Jax jungle. So
True, he did.
You're not wrong.
jungler pentakills are very rare. Just saying. So I think he should still be very proud.
Yeah, he's good. I think it really just comes down to All-Pro is kind of a popularity contest to some degree. And also I think it's one of those things where with the votes, it's like I think people have a tendency to want to mix it up a little bit, right? It just looks weird if your All-Pro is just the exact same as your LCS standings, right? Mm-hmm. And it's just people's votes, right? It's like I think that for Umpty, he's going to feel a lot more validation winning the split, actually going to Worlds as first seed for North America more than he will for people voting for him for All-Pro. So,
winning the split's way more important.
He'll also
of course. I mean, All-Pro is obviously it's a cool award to get, but it's not like, it's all in your hands. It's not something that you necessarily earned. It's just what people thought of you.
I mean, almost always there are exceptions to it. I mean, Impact getting first team All-Pro, but he usually does not, even though he is one of the most highly respected top laners and players in the LCS history, one of the greatest players to ever do it here. He usually is when he's on All-Pro, second or third team, he rarely gets first, actually, and he's never won MVP, largely because he is that more Umpty style, right? He's that more supportive style that he has played. And it's like I said, it kind of memeing, but not really. If you're a tank jungler, you're probably not getting first team All-Pro. If you're the guy who's playing Enchanter supports, you're probably not getting first team All-Pro, right? No one wins MVP playing like Karma Janna. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter how good you play. It just feels like you're just not going to win because your contributions are less obvious, right? If you're playing a support, for a support to win player of the game and win MVP and this type of stuff, there's a reason that when it's Enchanter meta, support's number one player of the game. It's all about the Alistar. You can see he flashed in and he comboed 4 people and that set it up and that's how they got the win, right? You can see when the jungler's on a big carry and gets a massive lead and takes over a team fight, right? Whereas the contributions oftentimes as a tank jungler is just enabling your carries, right? You got your mid laner to the point where they can have success, but then often the mid laner is the one who gets the credit, right? Because it's they're the one in that late game team fight that's getting the pentakill or getting the quadra-kill or doing whatever, but they could only get that because you set them up so well early game by playing for them and covering them and having vision around them and sweeping out all the wards so their enemies can't play around them and attack them and covering them on ganks and pushing out their waves and doing all these things that sacrifice your own game but set them up for success. So it's I just think the contributions from those roles are just less obvious, less visually obvious, and so that's always going to be the way it goes. But yeah, we talked about it when we were talking about our All-Pro voting. It is a weird feeling to just see no one from outside the top 3 teams. This is the first time ever in my All-Pro voting, and yeah, again, I've done All-Pro voting 18 times now where I didn't have anyone outside of the top 3 teams in there, but it just felt like these 3 teams were so dominant that it was really hard to make arguments for people to be outside, so I'm not surprised to see that there's no one there, because basically everyone that I talked to was kind of feeling similar ways, where it's you're talking about mixing it up. I felt like I felt that pressure I'm like, there's got to be someone that I'm not giving the credit to. Like, who outside of these top 3 teams can I put in All-Pro that like actually I can make a real argument for and defend it and feel like deserves it? And at the end of the day, it was just too hard.
It would be a disservice to the person of one of these 3 teams that you are keeping out in all of those cases. You know, I even examine like pretty closely like the bottom ones, and you're even thinking like, oh man, there were some great individual performances, but then there was always something that is going to hold back.
I was thinking River,
one of the other members.
Someone.
Yeah. As far as impact goes, though, he has 2 first-team All-Pros, 7 second-team All-Pros, and 3 third-team All-Pros. So he always, like, second-team All-Pro is also pretty highly recognized. Is just that maybe in all of these splits, like, there was someone, kill leader, top lane, whoever was the most dominant individual laner kind of gets that. But even just one step down at second team All-Pro 7 times in a row. He's collected a lot of awards in his time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I feel like for Umpty, this is just one more sacrifice for the team, right? It's like in game, you're picking Sedge, you're giving up your farm, and you're getting your laners ahead. All-Pro, you're sacking your
picking
spot.
Sedge, you're sacking your
It's all
first
good.
team.
Like someone's got to do it.
Well, when you guys are talking about validation, I was like, well, Umpty's going to feel a lot more validation when they win the world championship.
There you go.
So
If I'm playing,
when he has his skin in game.
if I'm a
this year,
jungler playing for
by
my
the way.
team and every single person on my team gets first team All-Pro, like that's
You're
a
the
win,
GOAT.
right?
Yeah.
It's a win. It's a win.
Yeah.
They don't do that if you suck.
I agree. Plus, I always feel like in some ways it becomes this kind of like rallying cry for the team, because oftentimes when someone feels like, oh, their one teammate got snubbed or whatever in All-Pro, the team all is like hyping that guy up and, jungle diff every game. And, it becomes this thing where the team can kind of rally around it. And even if it's like not really like, people aren't hating on Umpty or anything.
Yeah.
It can become this thing where it's like, Umpty's not getting the credit he deserves, and everyone, like, I wouldn't be surprised if all the TL people are talking him up in the interviews and hyping him up in post-game series and like all that kind of stuff.
Umpty's my new hope for Skarner being played in jungle role too, because I
think they're trying to win. I think they're going to try to win. I don't think so.
But he played a ton of pre-rework Skarner. Like he was almost like Captain Flowers level. So he's,
I don't know about that.
he's
Captain Flowers level. My man's a one trick. It's not even.
I don't
close to
think
his most
playing a
played.
pre-rework champ has a whole lot of bearing on playing it post.
I shouldn't have said the Captain Flowers line.
Yeah.
It was a perfect argument before that.
Yeah. You completely kneecapped yourself there.
I was a Skarner main in season 2.
Was he building Triforce, screaming at the top of his lungs? No, he was not.
He might have. He might have.
Usually it's me, when the games that I've played with him, it's me screaming, come gank mid now, and him being like, I got some camps to do, buddy.
Exactly.
You signed up for this. You knew you were going to have to be the autofill mid, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Flowers is always going for the camps. Definitely. Well, All-Pro definitely seems pretty expected, I would say, so far this split. But definitely congratulations to everyone who did win on All-Pro. Of course, MVP isn't going to be released until later, so we don't know the final results on that.
Impact.
I think a lot of people are thinking it's going to be Impact. That's who I voted to. I don't know if it's both of you guys voted or not, but like Impact, Core, I've heard some debates about that.
Yeah, I said all of mine on the last ones.
Yeah.
So
I think I voted Impact. I don't remember. Mark, like, he gave me the ballot last second and was like, yo, you got to fill this out right now. So I kind of sped through it, but
Impact, Blabber, and Core were my 3 that I voted for.
Mine was very similar, if not the same as that.
Yeah. I mean, Impact was just too good this season, man. And he's never won MVP. So that would be really cool. And I think that's something that it's, again, the accolades don't mean everything, but it is a cool benchmark and a cool, thing to have to kind of, as a career topper, to just be like, I was the MVP. He won the, what was it? Like, I guess he didn't win, but it was like the voting we did, the LCS 10 or whatever. And it was like he was ranked as the best top laner all time for LCS. So to have that, to have the MVP, to have, all these extra accolades, I think is really cool. And I hope he wins.
I do not. I can't even imagine him not winning. Like everyone I've talked to, everyone's voting for Impact. Everyone's like, yeah, it's so obvious it's Impact. So I don't know where the votes are going to come from if they are not that.
Maybe if there's two, the only way I could see it, because this has happened before, when there's too many competing members on a team, if some people are like, if there's like a core votes and APA votes or Yon votes or impact, and then there's all those, and then everyone who's not voting for a TL person as the top is like Blabber or I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
I think he's going to win too, but that would probably be the way in which he would lose if he were to lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, Blabber is the competitor.
Yeah. Only
'cause
non-TL
From you
person.
just said that he was your second vote, and I said last time he was my second vote. So that's 2 seconds right there. Just a couple people with some
2
first,
seconds, just a couple more seconds, just sprinkle them in. Who knows? You could be the reason, Kobe, that Impact didn't get it with that second place vote. But I think that's going to do it for us here at The Dive this week. We're already late for our meeting, so that is going to wrap it up for The Dive, driven by Kia. Thank you, Kia. Remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode of The Dive. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Make sure you send us your questions on Twitter with the hashtag TheDiveLOL. Week 2 of playoffs starts this Friday. It is on Friday, not Saturday, for game number 1. There are 3 series this week, so Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, Dig takes on NRG. 2 teams enter, 1 team must win. Make sure you tune in. Thanks for watching. We'll see y'all soon.